The transition of leadership has taken place in the city of Hong Kong.
剛才我同行政長官會面嘅時候咧，討論咗喺未來幾個。
John Lee, a former security chief, has succeeded Carrie Lam as chief executive. Both Lee and Lam are Catholic. The two met today after Lee's election yesterday by a select committee. Lee was the only candidate. He is promising an administration to safeguard China's sovereignty. And joining me now to discuss is Chang, author of The Great U.S.-China Tech War and the Coming Collapse of China. Gordon, welcome back. Always so good to see you. So what more can you tell us about Hong Kong's election, and what do you expect to see from the new chief executive?
John Lee's election is symbolic in the sense it shows that China now totally controls Hong Kong. The political process has been Beijing's for quite some time, especially after the June 30, 2020 imposition of China's national security law over Hong Kong, which many people say was the end of law. But John Lee's election is really basically shows the world that now China is 100% in control of the territory.
Gordon, how do you think he'll be received? I mean, do you think that he'll face maybe the same type of backlash and protests that Carrie Lam saw during her term?
The 2019 protests, we probably won't see those for a little while because Beijing right now is making sure that there is no dissent permitted in Hong Kong. So opposition will be muted. But the Hong Kong chief executive, his four predecessors, have all been failures in different ways, but they've all been failures because it's an impossible job. Because Beijing demands that the chief executive do certain things, and the people in Hong Kong don't like those things. And so the chief executives always ended up being unpopular. And the same fate is going to await John Lee because he's going to do things that the people in Hong Kong just do not like. For instance, COVID lockdowns, but also political repression.
And I want to switch gears here just a bit. China's export growth slowed to single digits in April, the weakest in almost 2 years. And this, as China's central bank says, that it will increase its support of the country's slowing economy. Gordon, do you think the central bank stepping in, will that be enough to help China's economy rebound?
It won't be. The export growth in April was 3.9%. But what was even more distressing was that imports were flat. And imports are really important because they show domestic demand. You have the COVID-19 lockdowns, Shanghai, Beijing, and all along the east coast of China, which is really the factory floor. So China's economy is contracting. We have heard statements from the central bank and from central authorities over the last couple of weeks. And those have caused short-term stock rallies, but those stock rallies have faded because people understand that Beijing right now does not have any answers to an economy that it looks pretty grim.
And you had mentioned Shanghai citizens there are facing renewed COVID restrictions despite a drop in cases. And a resident there told Reuters, quote, "We are not afraid of the virus. We are afraid of this policy." I'd like to get your reaction to that.
Yes, well, this COVID-19 dynamic zero COVID policy, which has been the basis for these draconian lockdowns, hasn't been working. People have been taken away, even though they're COVID negative, been put in these large quarantine hospitals where they catch the disease. This daily testing has also spread COVID-19, and it's just pushed China, the people in Shanghai, to the breaking point. We've seen this with the suicides. We've seen this with the people surging out into the streets to buy food. Shanghai, which was once a very sophisticated society, the Shanghainese say they're the most sophisticated in the world. Well, they've been reduced to a primitive society right now, scrounging for food and daily necessities.
Gordon, I know you also recently wrote a column about China preparing to invade Taiwan. Talk to us a little bit more about that and any new developments.
April 22nd, the Chinese Finance Ministry and the central bank held a meeting with dozens of foreign and domestic bankers to figure out how China could avoid the effect of sanctions like the U.S. and others imposed on Russia for the invasion of Ukraine. That obviously shows that the Chinese leadership is thinking about invading either Taiwan, Japan, the Philippines, India. Who knows? But the point is that the Chinese leaders are making active preparations to do something which they believe the international community will impose those measures. And that's the clearest sign yet that the Chinese leadership is now on an extremely aggressive path.
Gordon, we have probably about 30 seconds, maybe a little bit less, but I do want to ask you this. As you know, we have several midterm elections taking place in the United States. What are the chances that China's money could be influencing races?
About 100%. China put a lot of money into the 2020 presidential election. It did it indirectly through a number of different means. But we can expect the same thing for the midterms and for 2024. We can expect it for every election that we permit this. We should stop permitting it.
Yeah, we're going to leave it right there. Gordon, thank you as always. Always appreciate your analysis. Good to be with you.
Thank you, Tracy.